Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 163. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk about new movies that come out in theaters or in streaming. We'll talk about them, give you some pros, some cons, whether you should check it out in theaters. And then at the end of the podcast, we wrap it all up and we decide after watching it one time, this one movie, is it timeless? Is it something that I can see myself rewatching various different times in the future? Now, sometimes you might agree or disagree with some of the opinions that I might have on some movies. So, if you want to voice those opinions and you want to let me know directly, well, follow me on different types of social media platforms. I am on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads. On all of those, you can just search up Timeless Movie Podcast, all one word. Again, follow me, send me messages. Would love to hear you guys' thoughts. And if you ever want to email me, we also have an email here for the podcast, timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. Send me an email. Again, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on any recent movies that you've been able to check out and just, have any cool interactions about things that you are interested in watching, movies that you're anticipating, or anything else that you might have on your mind. Now, before we talk about this week's movie, I did want to highlight episode 162 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Go check it out. Go subscribe. Do all that good stuff because on episode 162, we talked all about Predator Badlands by Dan Trachtenberg. He has been on fire in the Predator universe and he keeps it going because I freaking loved Predator Badlands. But what about you? Did you enjoy the movie? Have you had a chance to see it? Well, go check out episode 162. That way you can let me know if you agree or disagree with some of my thoughts on that film. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and move over or really run over to the next segment in which we are going to be talking about this week's new movie. It is directed by Edgar Wright and it is called The Running Man. If you have heard that title before, well, there actually was an 80s movie that came out with Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Running Man as well. And so this is a new modern remake for it, and it stars a whole lot of actors. But before we get there, a couple of reasons why I wanted to check out this movie. First one, I kind of mentioned his name already, Edgar Wright. I have really dug a lot of his prior films. He has a cool flair for being able to really combine action and comedy, and he just kind of delivers in those kind of areas better than most other directors can do with those types of genres. So really wanted to give it a shot. And then the second reason is got to be the main star of the film, Glenn Powell. I mean, I've been a really big fan of him ever since I saw him in Top Gun Maverick, and then I got to see him in Twisters, but it really wasn't until Hitman. If you haven't seen that film, it actually came out on Netflix. Glenn Powell actually did such a great job in that role. He had to kind of pretend to be so many different types of people. It's very much about kind of the psychology of what humans are like. And so that really kind of gave me the insight that I needed to see, like, could this guy be a leading man? And he actually proved in The Hitman. So wanted to definitely support The Running Man and see how he would do here. So now that we've talked a little bit about some of the reasons why I wanted to watch it, let's go ahead and move over to the non-spoiler section. That way we can talk a little bit about the plot synopsis and my overall thoughts after leaving the theaters. Okay, The Running Man is directed by Edgar Wright. If you are not aware, Edgar Wright has made films such as Scott Pilgrim versus the World. He has made films like Baby Driver, as well as Shaun of the Dead. And if you ever saw it a couple years ago, Last Night in Soho, which I thought it was a pretty good movie. But Edgar Wright, has a cool style of, once again, blending things like action sequences as well as a lot of funny moments. And he just has a really good knack for that kind of a style. And it's worked so far in some of his previous films because, again, it's kind of that type of wavelength that I really connect with. And so he's trying to achieve the same thing with The Running Man. This time, his cast includes Glenn Powell, Lee Pace, Daniel Ezra, Katie O'Brien, Michael Cera, Jamie Lawson, Coleman Domingo, Josh Brolin. A lot of big-time actors. Really interesting stuff. But what is The Running Man about? Well, let me give you a little synopsis. That way, if you haven't seen the film, this kind of gives you a good idea. The Running Man essentially sets you up in the story of this dystopian world where Ben Richards, played by Glenn Powell, is trying to get a job. but he's being rejected. He's actually blacklisted from a lot of different types of companies because of his past history. And so he cannot contain or really sustain a job. And now he's forced to really do something very drastic. So what does he do? He ends up joining a dangerous game show called The Running Man. Now, this contest and this game show allows him to try to win 1 billion net dollars. But what is the catch? Well, the catch is that he has to survive 30 days with the entire country looking for him. He has to go undercover, go with disguises, but if he gets caught, the police will come or these hunters will come and kill him and take him out. That's how dangerous this game show is in this dystopian world. Now, you would think, well, why the hell would Ben Richards try to enter a contest like that? Well, biggest reason, his family. His wife and his daughter, who is sick. He has no money to get medicine, and he wants to take them out of the crappy apartment that they live in. And so he is basically put in that situation where he has no other choice. And if he wants to get money, he's going to have to enter this Running Man contest and try to make it 30 days. Can he do it? That is essentially what this movie is about. So now that we've seen the movie, what are my overall thoughts? I thought this movie was pretty good. It has really funny moments. It has some good performances by all the actors that I named a little bit before. There's always a couple of moments where some actors stand out above the rest, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then there's also some really good action set pieces that they're able to highlight. Again, that little touch that Edgar Wright has to film and make these action sequences really engaging. However, I will say that the movie is good, but not great. There's a couple of things that hold it back, and we'll talk a little bit about what are some of those elements in the con section. But first, let's go into some of the pros. Let's talk a little bit about what are some items that really stood out to me and made me enjoy some of the experience of The Running Man. Okay, first pro that I wanted to call out about The Running Man was the way that they presented commercials and shows in this dystopian universe. And so in The Running Man, essentially the US is kind of controlled and run by this big corporation called the network. They advertise a lot of game shows, they advertise a lot of different brands, and they also have these little riffs of reality TV shows that are very trashy, but they actually resemble our world. And so that's actually what I really appreciated. There's this one show that they highlighted in the actual film, and you actually see Ben Richards watching the show a couple of times, and it's basically a riff off of the Kardashians. And so I really like that. I like when there's these types of films and they highlight these different types of elements that are very familiar. They're very recognizable for us in the real world. And again, that I think that was very clever to include those types of aspects of a show like the Kardashians, maybe like a specific cereal brand that looks like something that we would get at a market, and just including those elements because again, as an audience member like myself, you can immediately you understand, like it becomes something recognizable and it makes you try to connect to the story or connect to the characters a little bit more. Now, what was so funny about some of these types of commercials is again, it was all just riffs on things that happened in real life, but they also included these very funny little highlight reels for this one hunter called Evan McCone. Evan McCone is played by Lee Pace. He's wearing a mask for the majority of the movie, but he has his own commercials where he's like showing off like, you can't run from me. I'm like one of the top hunters. And then he has these two weapons. He has a gun and he has a knife. The gun actually has the word destiny on it, and the knife has the word fate on it. I could be wrong. I could be messing that up. It could be vice versa. But it's just so funny because in the commercial, you just see Evan McCone just saying like, you can't escape destiny. And he shows off his gun. He's like, and even if you do, you can't escape your fate. And then there's like a knife. And he basically just shows him just killing and taking out these runners from the Running Man contest. And so just seeing those kind of commercials, again, it's very wacky. It's very wild. Again, that whole aspect of the presentation of commercials and showing off these other characters and showing off these brands, I thought was really well done. Second pro for me is going to be the performance of Coleman Domingo. Coleman Domingo plays the character Bobby T. He is the host of The Running Man and a lot of the different game shows for the network. And can I say that Coleman Domingo, his energy in this film is probably unmatched. I mean, he has so much charisma. He has so much aura as he's playing this host. And I don't know. To me, it was so enjoyable to just watch him on stage. He was able to just be exaggerated because once again, this is a dystopian world that is very familiar to ours, but just a little bit ahead in the future. And he's just able to just bring it in this role. He just is so funny. He's so charismatic, and I think what really, for me at least, what really works is that his voice also commands so much attention. There's even times where he's not on screen, he's not hosting, but you actually hear his voice in a voiceover, and he's kind of giving a play-by-play because there's times in The Running Man where there's these little probes that are kind of going around and acting as a camera, and they're trying to find the runners, and you could hear Coleman Domingo's character of Bobby T kind of giving a play-by-play, saying, "Oh, we're outside the apartment or the hotel of Ben Richards. He has no clue we're here, and we're gonna catch him off guard." And so he's like hyping up the crowd. He's trying to be that hype man for the audience to give this Running Man contest just much more color. And so props to Coleman Domingo. I really dug his performance. Okay, that is all the pros I had. So let's go ahead and move over to some of the cons. What are things that did not work for me or kept The Running Man from being great? Again, these are just going to be my opinions. You are probably not going to agree. So again, let me know in the comments if you disagree or agree with some of the things that I'll bring up. But my first con about The Running Man is actually going to be that I actually couldn't invest myself with some of these characters on like an emotional level. And that actually kind of sucks because when you're watching these characters, you're seeing these side characters, you really want them to win. You're trying to root for them in some kind of way. And I actually never felt that. I was enjoying the movie. I enjoyed the journey that these characters went on, but I never felt like, oh man, like I never felt bad when one of the characters got taken out, or I never felt bad when Ben was put in a specific situation where he was cornered. Uh, there was things or elements in this movie that just never took me over the line in regards to yes, like I want these people to make it all the way to the end. Now, it could have been dialogue, it could have been how the story was structured, the editing, but something about the film I just could not connect with entirely, and that just really bummed me out because I did want to root for these characters. Second con, and also maybe something that you guys don't agree with. For me, if you've seen the trailer, I actually feel like the trailer gives way too much of this movie. It gives away key action moments, it gives away funny scenarios that happen to Ben and other characters. And I feel like they just showed too much of the process. Even I feel like it kind of goes in that kind of chronological order. And that sucks. Like I never want to have a trailer give me everything about a movie. Now, I know it's not going to give me the themes, it's not going to give me the messages, it's not going to give me maybe very dramatic moments, but I feel when it comes to these types of movies that are action comedies, you should never give too much of either. Maybe include one scene or two scenes of action or one scene of a funny moment, but not all of them. And that kind of sucks. So that would actually be again something that really impacts me and my personal experience when I watch movies, and it almost kind of going down the path of maybe I should stay away from trailers now. And I've tried to do my best, especially for movies that I'm highly anticipating. I try to not see any type of frame or shot of it because I want it to be fresh in my mind when I'm watching it in the theaters. Okay, let's go now move on to the next section, which is going to be should you check this movie out in theaters? Now, I know I just kind of said that I had a big time and a big trouble connecting with characters and seeing things in the trailers that kind of spoil stuff. But I actually would still recommend you guys check this movie out. Again, those nitpicks and those cons are just things that I find as little flaws, but maybe you won't be bothered as much. And so I would actually say this is still an entertaining movie. It's still a fun time in the theaters. It's loud. There's a lot of action sequences that are just, super immersive. The music is also right in your ear as well. So it's just trying to add that tension to it. And so I would say definitely check this one out in theaters. Again, if you're a big fan of Glenn Powell or Edgar Wright or any of the other actors I mentioned, give this one a shot. I still think it's a good time. You're not going to be bored. I would just say that do not watch any trailers. Please stay away from it because it's going to really give away a lot of the key elements or the best moments between characters. And that just kind of sucks when a trailer does that. So stay away from the trailers and check this one out and make up your own opinion on it as well. All right. That is all of the non-spoiler thoughts that I had for The Running Man. Now, let's go ahead and jump into some spoilers. But before we do, if you don't want to be spoiled, please jump out of the video now. Watch The Running Man and then come back and let me know if you agree or disagree with some of the thoughts that I had about this film. All right, hopefully that gives you all enough time to jump out because we're jumping into spoilers with this first question. Is The Running Man a timeless movie? In my personal opinion, after watching this movie and kind of thinking about it a little bit more, I got to say that The Running Man is not a timeless movie for me, unfortunately. Couple reasons why. First one, I kind of mentioned it at the con section piece, but just to expand on a little bit more now that we can spoil the movie, I could not connect with one character, and that one character was the protagonist, Ben Richards. This has, and I want to make it clear, this has nothing to do with Glenn Powell's performance because his performance was pretty good. How he played Ben Richards makes sense. He was a very angry man. All he wanted to do was to do this for his family, and so the motivation, it makes sense. What I just didn't like was they didn't make it tough enough for Ben, if that makes sense. They didn't make it where he has no other choice but to join this contest. And I feel like they tried to set it up that way because his child was sick and they needed medicine. But I just felt like they should have shown more of Ben before we got to that point in order to show, well, where does he live? How hard is it in the neighborhood that he lives in? And just show more of the struggle. I feel like they started off the movie with him and his child, him trying to get a job, and it was a good start. But I wanted to see more of that struggle so that when that anger came in, when you see Ben get real angry and real rageful about what his situation looks like, it would have made me invest in his character. I wanted to kind of compare maybe an example, and this might not make sense. So, again, take this with a grain of salt, but I would have loved to have a situation like you have in One Battle After Another. Hopefully, you guys have seen that movie, but I'm not going to spoil too much. But in One Battle After Another, you're following Leonardo DiCaprio's character in the film for the portion of it, and he's trying to find his daughter. And you see how bumbling Leonardo DiCaprio's character is. You see him struggling. You see him not having all the answers. That worked so effectively because throughout the entire movie of One Battle After Another, you really didn't feel like Leonardo DiCaprio's character was going to be able to actually find a way to get to his daughter or save the day. And that's kind of the struggle that I wanted to see in The Running Man. You have this character of Ben Richards who he seems to just have the answers every single time. Now, he does get help throughout the movie by Michael Cera's character. He also gets help by a character played by Daniel Ezra. And so there is help, but I never once in the film felt like he was ever at a point where he was cornered, where he was struggling, where, oh no, the stakes are so high that he's not going to make it. Instead, throughout the movie, I always felt like in the back of my mind, now Ben Richards is going to make it. He's not going to die. And that's what ends up happening at the end of the movie. He ends up surviving a plane that ends up getting hit by a missile. And he kind of ends up getting revenge on Dan, who is the CEO of this network corporation. And Dan is played by Josh Brolin. That whole journey, I never felt like I was doubtful that Ben was going to make it. I just knew. And so it kind of sucks when you have that feeling when you're watching a story or watching a movie where you kind of know all the events that are leading to this situation and you know how it's going to end and the journey just isn't as satisfying. And so I feel like it was a combination of that. I feel like they should have shown more of the struggle of Ben just to make me much more invested in his character. Second reason that I feel like this movie is not timeless is there's a couple of threads that I wish they could have expanded on in this movie. And this could be just a personal preference, so I totally understand that. But a couple of those threads are, one was with Evan McCone, played by Lee Pace. You end up finding out in the last 15 minutes that he actually competed in The Running Man. He was actually the first contestant in the first season. He made it 29 days and then suddenly disappeared. Nobody knows what happened. And then you get the revelation that, oh, no, Evan McCone, he actually took a deal on the 29th day in the Running Man contest in order to become a hunter, in order to get paid lots of money. And then he ends up now taking out different contestants in the Running Man. And so that idea in the third act, I wish that was something that was a lot more kind of invested throughout the movie. Like if somebody would have been telling Ben, hey, there was that season one contestant, he disappeared. where is he? And having that almost kind of be a mystery of like finding out who it is and then finally revealing that, oh man, it's Evan McCone. He is that season one contestant. I know I'm describing a different movie altogether, but having that little thread be expanded on, I thought would have added another cool layer to the film. Another thread that I wish would have been, shown off a little bit more is Daniel Ezra's character. Daniel Ezra plays a kind of like a conspiracy theorist where he is trying to resist the network. He's trying to prove that there are, things being played out by the network where they're rigging the games. And so there's a couple of scenes where they show Daniel Ezra, and he's kind of covering up his face, but he's making these kind of YouTube videos of conspiracy theories, explaining how The Running Man is actually a rigged game show. With like, what is the network up to? Who are the CEOs that we should be paying attention to? And you only see two of those scenes. One about an hour, maybe like an hour and a half into the movie, and then the second one towards the end of the movie to explain that, oh, Ben Richards is still alive. Here's my conspiracy theorist and my reasoning behind it. And so that I wish was actually shown a lot more, or wish it could have been shown a lot more, because of the fact that I don't know, that kind of adds a little bit more to the film from a standpoint of, oh, okay, not everybody believes it. There actually is a crew or resistance group that wants to show that, hey, no, we don't believe anything that the network is telling us. So we have to make our own information. We have to make our own news and spread this out to the rest of the country. That I wish was expanded on more, because there is a moment in the movie where you suddenly see that people start rooting for Ben Richards. At the beginning of the film, everybody wanted him dead. And then all of a sudden, people just start like turning and they start, putting on different types of walls. They start putting with graffiti, Richards lives. And so that whole shift and that change in the tone of the world of The Running Man, where people now started to root for him, that to me kind of came out of nowhere. Like I didn't feel like that was earned. And what could have helped it be earned is if we would have included more of these conspiracy theories, like more of Daniel Ezra's character kind of informing people, like, in a dark web kind of a way, hey, don't listen to what The Running Man has. They're showing deep fakes of Ben Richards. They're showing these fake videos that aren't real. That's not him actually being recorded. And here's the truth. That I think would have been something that could have, obviously been something of the other side of the spectrum, where you have the network trying to tell the audience lies and Daniel Ezra trying to tell the truth. So having that be played out in the film, I thought would have helped even more, at least for me, to see like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, now we have the audience seeing the truth, or finding out that maybe the network is not telling us 100% of the truth. So again, those are just some of the concepts that I wish could have been expanded on a lot more, and it would have made my enjoyment of The Running Man even higher. All right, everybody, those are all of my thoughts on The Running Man. Once again, I thought this movie was good. It's just not something that I would rewatch in the future. It didn't keep me so engaged and captivated, but still a fun time if you want to check it out. But those are just my opinions on this film. What about you? Let me know in the comments, in an email, reach out to me on social media. Would love to hear your guys' full thoughts and opinions on The Running Man. Am I in the minority in regards to liking this movie? Maybe people after this weekend will really come out and say, no, this movie is awesome. And so more power to you. Definitely want you guys to enjoy these types of movies. So once again, let me know in the comments. Let's interact about The Running Man. All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys listening to my full thoughts and me rambling about The Running Man. This has been episode number 163 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we cover a new film. And after watching it once, we will decide, is it timeless? All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys later.